The 2021 season saw the Hypercar class debut in WEC, and with it, balance of performance in the top class of Le Mans and endurance racing. Today I want to take a look at how the BoP developed over the season and answer the question, was it fair? If you look at the season results, the obvious answer seems to be no, as Toyota has won every race and took all but one poles. But I think it's not that simple. So let's start from the first race and judge race by race. For the opening round in Spa, we only had two Toyotas and the old Rebellion LMP1 run by Alpine, as Glickenhaus wasn't ready yet. These two cars are hard to balance out, as Toyota is relatively high power, high weight and high drag, and the Alpine low power, low weight and low drag. If you give them the same power to weight, the Alpine will be way faster on top speed. And if you give the Toyota higher power to make up for it, it will be way faster on acceleration. In the end, the latter option is what they went for, with Toyota running at its absolute minimum weight of 1040 kilos and a maximum power output of 520. The Alpine was 110 kilos lighter, but with 70 kilowatts less at 450. This resulted in a power to weight of 0.5 kilowatts per kilo for Toyota and 0.48 for the Alpine. But the GR010 is able to transfer the power to the wheels more efficiently with its 7 gears compared to the Alpine 6. This resulted in the Toyota being the fastest on the straight and the Alpine in the corners. But the biggest problem for the Alpine through the whole season was its relatively small homologulated fuel tank. This meant that for 6-hour races the Alpine had to do an extra pit stop, even with fuel saving. This is why Alpine struggled to overtake the LMP2s at the start of the race, despite in theory having 50 horsepower more. They had to run the engine on lean through most of the race to even think about breaking the Toyota 1-2. It wasn't until the team allowed poor Andre to turn his engine up before he could overtake the United Autosports LMP2. The FIA and the ACO probably knew that the Alpine was a bit slower, but the old LMP1 winning in the first race of a new class isn't exactly a good image for both the new hypercars and the sport. Alpine's only hope was that their trusted and proven Orca Gibson machine would outlast the brand new Toyotas on reliability. This is exactly what happened. After 4 hours, the number 7 leading Toyota locked up at Purcell's and went straight on into the gravel, losing a number of laps. The commentators and most others argued that it was simply a driver mistake, but I suspect that it was the hybrid regeneration failing, and with that about half of the front axle braking power. If you look at the onboard, Kobayashi broke well before the curb on the left, which is the normal braking point for this car if you compare it to the practice onboard. Also in the practice onboard you can hear the hybrid system whistling, which I can't in the lockup onboard. In the end it was a 1-3 for Toyota, with the Alpine splitting them, and taking into account that it was the first ever race for this class, and the FIA and ACO had very limited data from the cars, I would say that for this event, the BoP was fair. In Portimao, Glickenhaus arrived with their brand new hypercar. It was slower than the Toyota and the Alpine, so both of them had to be slowed down. The FIA published the following BoP. With some basic math, we can calculate the percentage of weight and power penalties. The Alpine had to add an extra 2.4% of its weight and kept its power. The chart says minus 4 kilowatts, but that's compared to the V1 BoP and this is V2. Toyota had to add 2.5% extra weight and lost 1% of its power. With the new BoP and less power hungry track, the Alpine took pole by less than a tenth of a second to the next Toyota. And we saw the first proper hypercar on track battle. Meanwhile Glickenhaus was still figuring out how to set their car up, so I'll leave them out of the picture for this event. Alpine had the best on-track pace, but lost it due to their smaller fuel tank. I don't really know what to think of it. The only option to make this car competitive in the long run is to make it substantially faster than the others, but this will mean that it would easily take pole every race and run away at the start, and that's not really exciting, is it? I think the best solution will be to get rid of Alpine's minimum fuel time, which is 35 seconds for all hypercars. This would make them faster in the long run without touching the lap time. Considering that Glickenhaus was still learning, and I'll see Alpine's fuel issue as a penalty for not using a real hypercar, This BoP was just about fair as well in my opinion. Now we get into the real deal, with the best race of the season, apart from Le Mans for obvious reasons. No changes to the BoP were made, but Monza with its long power hungry straights is a very different track to Portimao, and with the second car from Glickenhaus ready, the expectations were high. Qualifying was a bit disappointing, as the cars lined up in perfect manufacturer order, which is never a good sign for a BoP class, but luckily the race was better. The 708 was doomed from the start, only running on 7 cylinders, which caused vibrations and spat metal particles into the oil. Alpine and Glickenhaus were closely matched, but it looked like the Toyotas were running to a 1-2 again, but first the 8 broke down, and later the 7 had to reset its systems, momentarily handing the lead to 709 Glickenhaus just before it had to do a brake change. Toyota got lucky with a full course yellow and won again by more than a minute, and if both cars didn't have problems, they would have probably sailed to an easy 1-2 again. So for this event, I'm going to say that the BoP was unfair in favor of Toyota. Just on a side note, can someone tell Martin Haven how the hybrid rules work for Hypercar? Because throughout the season, he's been saying untrue stuff like this.
Up to speed, but can't deploy the Hypercar's drive below 130 kilometers an hour. And that means the LMP2 car pulls away initially. Now he can use that four-wheel drive boost and goes by.
No Martin, it's not 130, it's 120. And no, the LMP2 doesn't pull away initially, because if the hybrid system is not allowed to deploy yet, the engine will just deliver the full 515 kilowatts on its own, until the hybrid system is allowed to take over. I've seen a lot of people that don't know exactly how the hybrid system works, so I'll link a short video below that explains it. Now that I cleared that up, after Monza I expected a small reduction in power for Toyota, because so far they had the upper hand on the most power hungry circuits, and the next event was Le Mans, a track mostly known for its many long straights. No changes to the BoP were made to my surprise, apart from crippling Alpine even more on their max energy per stint allowed. The BoP looked pretty promising all the way through test day and qualifying. Only Hypercar up next. Maybe I was wrong about Toyota being too fast.
Toyota qualified 1-2 by more than a second.
Oh come on ACO, if an 18-year-old can sense it coming from his couch, so can you. The second of the two Toyotas qualified almost 1.5 seconds in front of the Alpine, which is far outside of hybrid rule for judging BoP, which states, if two different cars from a BoP class qualify outside half a second of each other, or a second at Le Mans, the BoP is not fair, since these numbers are not uncommon to be the difference between teammates. Even with Oliver Pla in the Glickenhaus taking out the 8 at the start, less than an hour later the Toyotas were already in a 1-2 position again. And if it wasn't for the issues for the number 8 at the end of the race, the Toyotas would have finished 4 laps ahead of their nearest competitor. So for me, this is a clear unfair in favor of Toyota. At least Glickenhaus and Alpine provided some good battles, switching positions through the night as they cycled through their pit stops. For the last 2 rounds in Bahrain, I don't want to get too deep into it as Glickenhaus didn't show up, since they don't sell cars in the Middle East, so the marketing potential was low. And judging from their statement on Instagram, also a little bit out of protest for the unfair BoP. They didn't ask for Toyota to be slowed down, but for Glickenhaus and Alpine to be sped up, which is not really possible since Glickenhaus already runs the absolute minimum weight and the max power the ACO are allowed to give them. But it's clear that Glickenhaus is not happy with the BoP. With Glickenhaus gone, they reverted back to pretty much the Spa BoP, but Alpine were allowed to run 4 kilowatts more, and they reduced their maximum stint energy even more. These last 2 rounds were really boring for the Hypercar class, with an easy Toyota 1-2 in both finishes. Another clearly unfair BoP. So we have 2 fairs and 4 unfairs in favor of Toyota. Come on ACL, you have a record of being able to make 5 cars fight bumper to bumper for 24 hours in GTE. Why couldn't you slow down the team that has an obvious advantage? I get that Toyota put the most money into it, but this class was made for all competitors to have an equal chance at victory, regardless of their budget. You can do better, ACO. I hope they fix it for the 2022 season. Glickenhaus expects a fair BoP, so they may know more than we do. What do you think about the 2021 BoP? Should they slow down Toyota for this season? And what should they do with Alpine's small fuel tank deficit? Let me know. This was Endu-Rants for now, and see you in the next one.